Well, good morning. I can't tell you how glad I am to see you. It means the world to me. If you've been here the past couple of Sundays, you know that I'm currently preaching a sermon series entitled Restored. And on this very day, at this very moment, I should be preaching sermon number 3 in that series. However, there has been a change of plan. I'm going to preach a different sermon. Some of you are asking, well, I wonder why. Well, my boss has instructed me that he has something else that he needs to say today. You say, your boss? You said last week you were in charge. Well, not really. You know the way we do things around here, if you've come any length of time, you know that we still prepare our sermons the old-fashioned way. Open Bible, on our knees, praying, reading, listening, letting God share something with us that we would come and share with you. And Monday through Friday, Gabe, I did that. Sure did. And working on good old sermon number 3, huh? And Friday afternoon, I don't know how to explain this. If you've preached, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's like I hit a wall. And I don't know what you do when you hit a wall, but I tell you what I do. I beat my head against a wall. When I come to a wall, I beat my head against it. So for a while, it was just like taking a square peg, trying to shove it in a round hole. I'm going to make this work. And finally, in panic, I sent a text to Tim McCall, and I said, I don't think I'm preaching sermon number 3. Pray for me. And I look back on it. What was I asking Tim to pray for? Huh? Pray that God will change his mind and let me go with sermon number 3. Like God was going to listen to Tim, huh? I told Lynn before I went to bed Friday night, I will be completely shocked if I end up preaching that sermon. I just got a feeling something's in the works. And so I got up yesterday morning and I just opened my Bible and said, I'm available. God, you've probably got something you need to say. I know you've got something. And so just whatever it is, pass it on to me. And he brought a Bible story to my mind. And I spent the day meditating on it. And I want to share a sermon with you that I have entitled, Wounded and Blessed. Got it? You mean wounded or blessed? That's not what I said. Wounded and blessed. The story revolves around the life of a man named Jacob. He was born to a couple named Isaac and Rebekah. Jacob had a twin named Esau. Esau was born moments before Jacob. And for that reason, he was in line to receive an incredible benefits package called the birthright. The birthright included position, power, possessions, money. And it would be bestowed upon the firstborn by his father in an act, a legally binding act called the blessing. Well, as Jacob grew older, he began to recognize that he was not in line for that, but his brother was. But he coveted this benefit package. Jacob's name means deceiver. He was always good at conning people out of what they had, but what he wanted. And so he successfully tricked Esau into giving him the birthright. Tricked him. Then he tricked his own father Isaac into bestowing it upon him in this legally binding act called the blessing. When Esau learned what had been taken from him, and he understood that he had lost it, and lost it for good, he was furious. And the Bible said he consoled himself by telling others, as soon as my father is in the ground, I'll kill my brother. I'm going to kill him. Esau's mother, Rebekah, recognized this is no idle threat. That's exactly what he will do. So she went to her son Jacob and said, you best pack a few things and get out of town. Matter of fact, you need to stay out of town until your brother cools off. I want you to go to the region of Haran. I want you to live with your uncle Laban for a while. Jacob took her advice. It was good advice. He goes up to live with Uncle Laban, and the craziest thing happened. He fell in love with Laban's youngest daughter, Rachel, his first cousin. You say, can you explain that? No. I cannot. But it happened. Laban came to Jacob one day and said, we need to talk your wages. You're working for me for nothing. What do I need to be paying you? He said, I'll tell you what you do. I'll work for you 7 years. You don't have to pay me a nickel. Just give me Rachel's hand in marriage. He took the deal. The Bible said that he loved Rachel so much that those 7 days seemed as a day. The wedding day came. Wedding night came. The morning after the wedding night, old Jacob rolled over in bed, and there was a woman in the bed. And it wasn't Rachel. It was her older sister, Leah. Using the cover of darkness, Laban had deceived the deceiver, gave him the wrong woman. So he goes to Laban. Of course, he's angry. He's like, what have you done? Laban said, hey, this is fixable. You can have Rachel. Matter of fact, you can have her in 7 days. But you got to work for me another 7 years. What's a man going to do? He took the deal. He worked another 7 years, and then he worked another 6 years after that. As a matter of fact, he was in Haran living with Laban for 20 years. During that time, he married not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times. You say, man, his marriages never worked out. No, they all worked out. He had 4 wives. Had a house full of kids. He amassed incredible wealth, huge herds and flocks. And he became very, very wealthy. 20 years in, God spoke to him and said, Jacob, time to go home. Go back home. And he gave him a promise. He said, go home and I promise you I got you back. So Jacob loads all his family up, all their possessions. He's got servants. He's got all these herds and flocks and all these animals. And they start back home. Now, what was waiting on Jacob at home? Maybe the better question is, who was waiting on Jacob at home? Esau. His vengeful, angry brother was waiting on him. So Jacob was sweating bullets over this. He was doing what God said. He's going home. But he's terrified of what Esau would do to him, and maybe even worse, what Esau might do to his family. So he had an idea. Adam, the guy, was always thinking. And he wasn't always clearly thinking. But he had an idea. I got to kind of smooth this up. I can't just show up one day in his yard. He said, I'm going to send messengers ahead of me to tell Esau we're coming, and we hope that we have a cordial, respectable reunion. So the messengers go. They come back and said, hey, boss, we told Esau what you sent to tell us. Told him that you're coming. Hope everything's kind of bygones. Let bygones be bygones. And I feel like we need to let you know this. He is on his way. He's not waiting on you and this clan to get there. He's coming to you. And he's put together an army, that's the word the Bible uses, of 400 men, and he's coming here. Now, what do you think Jacob's thinking? He's assuming the worst. He's coming to kill me. He's coming to terrorize my family. And so, I tell you what he did. The man, I believe I said this. He was always thinking, but seldom thinking clearly. He came up with an idea, Ron. This is what he thought. Here's what I'm going to do. I got these 2 servant wives and all their young'uns, and I'm going to put them in a group, and I'm going to let them kind of go out front, and then I've got my real wives, and their young'uns, and I'm going to put them in a group behind them so that hopefully when Esau finds us, he might wreak havoc on the first group, maybe get tired of killing them and spare my real family. What a loving, compassionate dad he was, huh? Just tender-hearted, thoughtful. That was his plan. Then he finally did what he should have done all along. He met with God and he prayed. This is what he prayed. He didn't really ask God for anything. He reminded God of several things. He said, I'm doing this because you told me to. That's the only reason I'm doing it. You told me to. I wouldn't do this if you had. Well, I'm doing it, huh? He wasn't happy about it, but he's doing it. And he said, you promised me you'd take care of me. That's what you promised. And I'm expecting you to live up to your promise here. You ever prayed like that? I know you have. Then after his prayer, he goes back to thinking. He's like, I know what I need to do. I can kill him with kindness. So he put together these 3 herds of animals. He put shepherds with each herd. He went to the first shepherd and he said, here's what you take this group, start to Esau. You're going to meet him somewhere on the trail and he's going to say, whose animals are these? And this is what you say. They belong to your servant Jacob, but he wants you to have them as a gift. And he sends him off, and then he waits 2 or 3 hours, and he brings the next group. You go do the same thing, and then he waits 2 or 3 hours. He sends the third group out, and he's thinking, I'm going to wear him down with my generosity, my kindness, my grace. I'm going to wear him down. He's going to change. And so after he sent out the third group, we pick up on our story. It's found in Genesis 32, verse 22. I want you to read it with me. During the night, Jacob got up. You see that? Got up. He's already been in the bed. And took his 2 wives, his 2 servant wives, and his 11 sons, and crossed the Jabbok River with them in the dark. After taking them to the other side, he sent over all his possessions. This left Jacob all alone in the camp. You ever had a restless night? I'll answer for you. Yeah, you have. You've gone to bed. Everybody in the house went to sleep. But you. Something was bothering you. You couldn't, there was something on your mind. You couldn't get it off your mind. You were anxious. And so you tossed and you turned and you thrashed. Maybe you prayed, God, help me go to sleep. I got to up and go to work. Help me. Sleep wouldn't come. That's what's going on with Jacob here. He went to bed, but he couldn't stay in the bed. You know what he did? He did what I do. He got up. But he did something I dare not ever do. He woke everybody else up. Oh, listen, man, I've been married a while. I learned, no. He woke everybody else up. He got his wives and his children. He said, load up everything. We're going on the other side of the river. He took them across the river. He came back and told his servants, pack everything up. Get every cow, chicken, I don't care. You get everything across that river. It had to take quite a while. Probably put him into the wee hours of the morning. But eventually found himself alone on the far side of the Jabbok River. I want you to see what happened next. This is a weird story, but it's in the Bible. He said, this just left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until the dawn began to break. Kind of picture this. I picture Jacob sitting there alone. I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning maybe. Perhaps he's staring into a campfire. And man, he's thinking, the wheels are turning. He's evaluating this and this. What if I did this? How if his mind is working. And all of a sudden, he sees something in his peripheral vision. Something just moved from the shadows to the edge of the firelight. He turns and looks, and he can see that it's a man. I'm telling you, it's just a shadowy figure of a man. You ask, who was this man? We'll see. Jacob didn't know who this was. But the strangest thing ensued. They got in a fight. You go, what? They got in a fight. Jacob began to wrestle this man. The man was wrestling Jacob. They're having it out. Do you wonder why? I had to wonder why. What was said? What was done? Huh? The Bible doesn't tell us what provoked the fight. So would you mind if I used my imagination for a minute? I'm going to. I wondered if the man didn't walk over to Jacob and say, I can give you what you want. And maybe Jacob said, then hand it over. To which I believe the man must have said, no. To which Jacob must have said, well, then I'll take it. To which the man must have said, have at it. Give it your best shot. Let's see what you got. So Jacob was so desperate. There's something he wanted that he jumped on this guy and they began to fight furiously for the next several hours. If you had listened, you would have not only heard the sounds of limbs breaking and leaves thrashing, you would have heard Jacob saying, bless me. And you would have heard the man say, bless me, never, bless me, I'm not going to do it. Look what happened. When the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of its socket. So in other words, this mystery man recognizes this little wiry dude's not going to give up. So he reached out and he wrenched his hip out of socket. Yeah. Now let me tell you what that tells me about the mystery man. He'd been holding back. He hadn't been giving it his best effort. He had been letting Jacob continue the fight. He wrenches his hip out of socket. Look what he said. Verse 26, then the man said, let me go, for the dawn is breaking. In other words, give up, boy. Let it go. Ain't happening here tonight. You might as well crawl away. You say, who is this guy? We're going to see. It's going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mind. Huh? You're thinking it had to be Clint Eastwood. Well, that was my first thought, but Then the man said, let me go, for the dawn is breaking. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. I'm not giving up. I'm not raising the white flag. There is no surrender in me. You have got the capacity to give me what I want, and I am not giving up. Bless me. You know what he's doing here? He's hurting. Right? Hip. But he's hanging on. Here's what I know. I'm talking to several people in this congregation this morning, and that's exactly where you are. You're hurting, but you're hanging on. You're hurting, but you're hanging on. Verse number 27, this mystery man said, what's your name? The man asked. He replied, Jacob. You know what he said? He said, I'm a deceiver. I'm a con man. I'm a huckster. I use people. That's what he's saying. Verse 28. The mystery man said, we're about to change that. We're about to change you. Your name will no longer be Jacob, the man told him. From now on you'll be called Israel, which means God fights. He said, we're going to call you Israel because you have fought with God and with men and you have won. What happens when God fights? We win. This mystery man said, this is going to be a defining moment in your life. You're going to leave here tonight and you will always be different. No more a deceiver, but from this point, no more a deceiver using people, but you become a winner because God is going to be on your side and He's going to fight for you. He's going to take up your cause. This is a big change. Verse 29, please tell me your name, Jacob said. Why do you want to know my name? The man replied. Well, this next sentence is huge. Look at this. Then he blessed Jacob there. He gave Jacob what he wanted. He gave Jacob what he needed. He gave Jacob what he'd been asking for. And apparently, at this point, I'm going to ask you, have you ever watched the movie Pale Rider? Anybody ever watched the movie Pale Rider? Listen, I own the movie. The three of you watched the Clint Eastwood movie. I know that ain't true. Come on. How many of you watched Pale Rider? See there? Honesty is good for the soul, right? Have you ever watched High Plains Drifter? There you go. At the end of both of those movies, my hero, Clint Eastwood, mounts that beautiful horse, rides off into the sunset, and just disappears. Gone. I think the mystery man blessed Jacob, turned and walked off, and just disappeared. Who was this guy? At that moment, Jacob got this thing figured out. Verse number 30, Jacob named the place Peniel, which means face of God. For he said, I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared. You know who it was? You know who the mystery man was now? It's God. Here's a human being. I'm telling you, a jerk of a human being. And he's scared. And he's worried about his family. Now, he's scared for his own hide, but he's worried about his family. He doesn't know what to do. He just knows that he needs something. He needs a blessing from God. He needs God to do something that nobody else can do, change his brother's disposition. So he clears the camp. He sits down alone, and guess who showed up to visit this guy? Come on. Did you see that spitfly there? If you're visiting, there's a reason. Nobody's sitting right there. Right there. Huh? I've cleared them out. Over the years, you see them cleaning their glasses. This ordinary guy, less than ethical, needs God. And what happens? God shows up and picks a fight with him. You didn't see that one coming, did you, huh? You expected this compassionate God to come in and, oh, I see that you're hurting. How can I help you? I'll be glad to give you anything you want and then some. No. God picked a fight with a human being. Now, this was probably a pre-angelic appearance of Jesus himself, and this ain't the little Jesus wearing that white robe and them sandals, carrying that little sheep over his shoulder. This ain't the same Jesus that you see in your mind. This was God. And he fought with this man all night long. Look at verse 31. The sun was rising as Jacob left Peniel, and he was limping because of the injury to his hip. He was wounded. Right? Oh, Jacob was wounded. He went limping across the river, walked into camp. The Bible said he hadn't been there minutes when Esau showed up. He finally did something right. He stepped in between Esau and all of his family. And the Bible said that when Esau saw him, he broke into a run. You're like, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's about to get his tail kicked, right? Esau's like, I've been waiting a long time for a piece of you, boy. Here I come, you know. The Bible said when it got to Jacob, he embraced him. And these two men began to weep. The Bible tells us that Esau greeted him with a friendly smile and received him warmly. That's the blessing Jacob had been wanting. So at the end of this story, we see Jacob in a strange condition. He's both wounded and blessed. He's wounded and blessed. I want to tell us a story. This is what I feel like point I'm supposed to make. There's a lesson I want you to take with you today. You can be wounded and blessed at the same time. You with me? Let's talk about it for just a minute. Oh, we got all kind of time. I'm just going to tell you now, don't look at your watch. Trust me, we're good to go. God wounded Jacob. He did it. He wrenched Jacob's hip out of the socket. Wrenched is the word used in the Bible. Do you know what that means? It means that God took hold of Jacob and violently twisted his hip out of socket. Violently did it. Now, you may understand all that. I don't understand all this. I do know this. That had to hurt. Jacob's pain came straight from the hand of God. Does that shock you? I'm guessing that you're wondering why God would do that. Well, here's my theological explanation. You ready? Why would God do that? I don't know. I don't have any idea. Therefore, I'm not going to try to explain or defend God's actions. He's God. I'm not. He does whatever he wants. In this case, for whatever his reasons, he chose to wound Jacob. Make no mistake about it, Jacob's pain came from the hand of his God. Many of you readily identify with Jacob, don't you? Because you've been wounded. Sometime back, you took a hit. It hurt then, and it's still hurting today. Perhaps like Jacob, you haven't been quite the same since you were wounded. Are you walking through life with a limp? I'm not talking about a physical limp. I'm talking about an emotional limp. You're hurting, and you can't hide it. To make matters worse, all of this happened under God's watch. You know what I mean by that? Your wound may not have come directly from the hand of God, but neither did He stay the hand that wounded you. He saw this coming, could have prevented it, but He did not. And now you're haunted with the question, why? Why would a God that loves me look the other way and let me be so deeply wounded? Wow, Ronnie, ready for my answer? This is going to astound you. I don't know. I don't know why he would do that. He's God. I'm not. I don't always understand him. I'm going to rephrase that. I seldom understand him. His ways, his timing. Sometimes I don't know why he does what he does, but however, I do know this. Wounds lead to change. You with me? I know that. I know that wounds lead to change. God wounded Jacob, and then he changed Jacob. God turned Jacob into Israel. He turned a deceiver into a winner. God had been incredibly good to Jacob. He had given him a wonderful family, incredible wealth. It would have been so easy for Jacob to look around and assume that all this is enough. This is just enough. However, God had a whole lot more in mind. God had chosen to use Jacob to build a new nation, a godly nation. God wanted Jacob to be more than the head of a great family. He wanted him to be the head of a great nation. But before God could use Jacob, he had to change Jacob. And before he changed Jacob, he wounded Jacob. Wounds led to change. I can't say that I completely understand it, but pain has a way of changing human beings in profound ways when nothing else will. Pain humbles us. Pain makes us teachable, pliable, leadable. Pain brings us to the end of ourselves and helps us become totally dependent upon God. I don't know why God has allowed you to be so deeply wounded, but I do know that wounds lead to change. So perhaps your wounds are the evidence that God is wanting to change you greatly so that He can use you greatly. Or perhaps God has allowed you to be wounded deeply so that He can bless you greatly. You see, wounds lead to change, and change leads to blessings. After God changed Jacob, He blessed him. He gave Jacob what he wanted, needed, and what he'd been asking for. The same God who wounded Jacob blessed Jacob. At daybreak, Jacob came limping back into camp, wounded and blessed. I'm sure that it was obvious to everyone that Jacob had been wounded. Can you imagine the conversations? Hey, Jacob, what happened to you? Why are you limping? Well, I was having my prayer time, and God just up and knocked the fire out of me. I mean, everyone knew Jacob had been wounded, and soon everyone would know that he had also been blessed. When he and Esau came face to face, Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, greeted him, received him warmly. Vengeance and hostility were replaced with love and forgiveness. The reunion wasn't bad, it was a blessing. We believe that we're either wounded or blessed, but never wounded and blessed. For us, it's one or the other. It's either or, but never both. Certainly not at the same time. Well, Jacob was both wounded and blessed. And what I'm here to tell you is you can be too. Long before the wounds heal and long before the pain subsides, you can be blessed. You can be hurting, yet happy. You can be in pain, yet at peace. You can be wounded and blessed at the same time. In light of that lesson, what am I encouraging you to do? Pretty simple. Don't give up. You are in the early stages of a process. Now listen to me. And you are in, if you're wounded, here's what you need to know. You're in the early stages of a process. Wounds lead to change, and change leads to blessings. Benefiting from this process requires patience. You can't give up. Rather than giving up, you got to persevere, but that's not easy to do because this process is painful. Can I get an amen there? Wounds hurt. And when those wounds are inflicted upon us by God, or they are inflicted upon us under God's watch, the pain intensifies. So what's the typical human response to that kind of pain? We give up. And unfortunately, we give up before the change takes place and the blessings arrive. After God wounded Jacob, he commanded him, "Let me go." And that's exactly what I would have done. I mean, why hang on to a God who hurt you rather than helped you? If Jacob had given up, think of how differently his story may have ended. Think of how bitter he may have become. Think of how disillusioned he may have become with God. Fortunately, Jacob refused to give up. Was he hurting? Yes. Confused? I'm sure of it. Determined? Absolutely. Jacob said, and I paraphrase, "I will not let this pain deter me. I will not give up until you have finished what you have started. I'm not giving up until you have blessed me." Jacob refused to give up, and he was changed and then blessed. So if you're sitting here this morning, you're wounded, don't you dare give up. Keep praying. Keep believing. Keep going until you're not only wounded, but you are wounded and blessed. Let's pray together. Why don't you pray? You sitting here this morning wounded? I want you to do like Jacob. I want you to pray. I want you to talk to God. Maybe you just need to confess to Him. God, that event that happened to me sometime back, you know how much it hurt me. God, you know that I'm hurting. I'm hurting just as badly today. I need something from you, God. I need something that only you could give me. I need you to do something only you could do for me. I need you to bless me. I'm not asking you to necessarily heal me. I'm not asking you to rectify some situation that took place. I'm not asking you to make all the pain go away, but I'm asking you for this. Will you help me be happy while I'm hurting? Will you help me be at peace while I'm in pain? God, will you help me, like Jacob, be wounded? I get that. I take that. I accept that. But wounded and blessed. Oh, God, it's something I know that you alone could do. That's why I'm talking to you. And this is what I need. And this is what I desire. In the name of Jesus, we pray this together. thank you for your patience. You're free to go.